Small Spaces by Katherine Arden. Chapter 9. Misty Valley makes most of its money from ecotourism, Dad had told Ollie on the way to school. That means Linda Webster isn't selling her milk for big bucks. She's getting the big bucks from idiots who want to milk the cow. And I mean actual big bucks. She just bought a Mercedes for going down to Boston. This town's never seen an ordinary farmer do so well. Most milking barns had machinery to do the milking. Linda Webster's cows were led in on halters and milked into buckets. Ms. Webster even had one cow who was on a weird milking schedule, so she could be milked for tour groups, not at 5 a.m. This cow was tied in one of the milking stalls when the 6th grade clomped in. A man, who was sitting on a stool next to her, stroking her udder, humming under his breath. He had a shock of pale hair, even lighter than Coco's, curling over his forehead. His face was angular. There was a dimple on one side of his mouth. Up ahead, Lily Mayhew was walking with Jenna Gurman. They both were struck with a severe case of giggles. "This is Seth," said Ms. Webster. Seth's eyes were dark and just a little green, like looking into a pond on a cloudy day. "He helps out around the farm," Ms. Webster said. "Can anyone tell me what he's doing now?" "Getting her to let the milk down," said Mike Campbell. He was one of the farm kids. Obviously was in his voice. A third of the class lived on dairy farms. "This is Cora," said Seth. He had a soft, pleasant voice, but it cut through the farm kids' impatience. The Hockey brothers chattered, even Lily Mayhew's giggling. They all quieted down. Seth, Ollie thought, would not stand for nonsense from kids or cows. Probably Cora didn't dare kick the milk bucket. Seth started to milk her in steady strokes. The bus driver was still a step behind Ms. Webster, but if she was scared of him now, she showed no sign of it. "Cora is a Jersey cow," Ms. Webster said. She went into detail about the nature of Jersey cows. Ollie's attention wandered. A black cat was watching the milking. He was big and sleek, the kind of cat that tortures mice and steals cream. Without looking around, Seth lifted the cow's teat and aimed at the cat, who caught the milk in its mouth with a practiced air. A few kids applauded. The cat twined itself around Seth's legs, purring. Cora shivered and stamped. Seth jerked his chin. The cat left. The one cow in Vermont that's afraid of barn cats, and the one cat in the world that obeys orders, Ollie thought. But still, nothing she'd seen explained Ms. Webster's tears the day before. Mike, Phil, and Brian were passing Mike's phone around, grinning. Mr. Easton reached over Brian's head and confiscated it. The class snickered. Mike looked wounded. "Cora is our oldest," Ms. Webster said, an edge in her voice. Well, the 6th grade wasn't exactly hanging on her every word. "She doesn't give much milk anymore, but she is gentle." Cora chewed her cud and blinked at them. "Perfect to meet guests. Would anyone like to milk her?" Seth stood up, leaving the bucket down by Cora's feet. Even the kids who lived on dairy farms rarely milked cows by hand. Cows were used to getting milked by machines and didn't like people. No one wanted to get kicked by an angry cow. The whole 6th grade hung back. Lily and Jenna giggled and pushed each other forward, but neither volunteered. "Someone volunteer or I'm picking someone," said Mr. Easton. "I want to be first," squeaked Coco Zintner suddenly. "Let me go." She pushed forward. "Hello," she said delightedly to the cow and reached up to give Cora a pat. Some of the farm kids snorted. Coco's parents had only moved the family up north that year to get back to nature. Things that bored the local kids, like cows, all delighted Coco. "Get back to nature," Ollie had once overheard Miss Mountain whisper to Mr. Easton, sighing. "I wonder if nature will survive it." Coco stepped toward the milking stool. "Wait now. Easy," began Mr. Easton. Too late. Coco tripped on the milk bucket and went flying. Cora, startled, jumped and shuffled. The whole class laughed. Even Ms. Webster cracked a smile. Well, Coco had looked ridiculous, going splat on the barn floor. Only Seth didn't laugh. He looked thoughtful. Coco burst into tears. The noise was unbearable. Coco crying and kids laughing. Ollie decided that she'd had enough. She edged toward the barn door, then slipped out. Mr. Easton didn't see her. He was preoccupied with Coco, who had a bloody chin. If anyone asked, Ollie decided, she would just say she'd gone to the bathroom and gotten lost. Outside it was cool and windy. Ollie took a deep breath of not cow-smelling air. There was a vegetable garden behind the house full of runner beans and kale, turnips and carrots. She went inside. I'm going to pause there. I'm picturing a big, beautiful farm with a red barn that has cows in it. It's kind of a rainy, misty day. And I wonder if maybe Ollie is going to find a place where she can sit and read her book, Small Spaces. Okay, back to reading. A garden after rain was much better than echoing barn. Ollie loved gardens. Her mom had always planted a garden in the summer. Ollie had been snacking from vegetable patches since she was old enough to chew. Ollie broke a broccoli flower out of its stalk and ate it happily. Munching, she wandered toward the middle of the garden. 3 scarecrows stood in the very center holding hands. They smiled big smiles at each other, their lips pierced with thread. The biggest scarecrow wore overalls. His smile had more like a snarl. A crow perched on its head. "Caw," said the crow, beating its wings. "Great job you're doing," Ollie told the scarecrows. She bent for a rock aimed just below the crow. She'd once made the mistake of aiming at a bird and never forgot how terrible she'd felt when she knocked it out of the air. She caught the scarecrow in the forehead. The crow flew up unhurt, cawing indignantly as the scarecrow's head burst open. Ollie got a good look at what her rock had left. Ripped open burlap, leaking straw, and below it, the big yarn grin, unchanged. She shuddered and hurried away. To her left, she could see where the berry bushes grew in the summer. To her right was the edge of the forest and the faint silver gleam of the creek. Ollie stepped into the forest. It was like a different world there, golden with autumn. Wet earth squished underfoot. It would be a good morning for mushrooms. Footsteps crunched in the leaves. "Hello?" Ollie called. Silence. Maybe she'd just heard a chipmunk. She went a little farther in. A stick cracked right next to her. She jumped and turned. No chipmunk. No one. But she caught sight of a small iron gate. Ollie went closer. The gate led to an old cemetery with graves tilted like bad teeth. Ollie put a hand on the gate. The hinges gave with a shrill "ee." Ollie looked around to see if anyone heard. No one had, of course. She was definitely alone. She tried to ignore the shivery feeling going up her spine. She slipped inside the cemetery. Green gravestones stood in messy rows with their inscriptions blurred by time. Ollie brushed dirt off the first. Ezekiel Hopkins, the first one read. B, born 1836. D, died in 1869 of the falling of a tree. Sorry, Ezekiel, Ollie thought. She went to the next. Fanny Collar, she read, November 11, 1801 to June 28, 1886. Wife of Amasa Piper, first white child born near this spot. God have mercy on your servant. A weird thing to be remembered for, thought Ollie. A big stone with a plaque and a long list of names. Dust to dust, it said, but they will rise up out of the ashes. The schoolhouse fire, Ollie thought. There is a memorial after all. Then she spotted 3 headstones a little apart from the others, right against the tumble-down fence at the back. These 3 were in a cluster, one big and 2 smaller. They lay at awkward angles as though someone had not taken care when they put them in. Ollie, curious, went closer. Jonathan Webster, Elizabeth Webster, said the bigger one, dead 1894. May the dead lie quiet. Ollie frowned. Caleb Webster, said the headstone on the left. Katherine Webster, said the headstone on the right. Ollie's fingertips got cold. 4 graves, 3 stones, said a raspy voice, but only 2 sets of bones. Ollie squeaked, jumped and whirled. The bus driver stood behind her. Where had he come from? The ground was thick with dead leaves. They should have rustled. Only alone in the woods, the bus driver's red lips, his mushroom gray skin, and his sideways grin weren't just strange. They scared her. Yeah, said Ollie, heart beating fast. Sorry, I got lost and was just heading back. She trailed off. The bus driver did not react. Ollie's heart beat faster and faster. The driver began to whisper, and it took Ollie a moment to realize he was murmuring in a sing-song. On a fair and sunny day, 2 grown boys went out to play. All day they ran and ran, but only one went home. Ollie stepped back again. Another step, and she'd be leaning on Kathy Webster's tilted grave. But, John, my dear, said their kind mother, where on earth is your little brother? Don't know? Oh, foolish child, enough nonsense. You are exiled till you bring him home for supper. Ollie didn't know what to say. The 3 gravestones loomed in her imagination, big as barns at her back. I like poems, she said a little at random, talking to keep herself from being frightened. I memorized one from a book I liked, The Grey King, on the Day of the Dead. No, said the bus driver. Something cold and flat in his voice silenced Ollie. Her heart was going rabbit fast now, with the iron fence of the graveyard behind her and the bus driver in front. Listen, girl, said the driver. Listen. There's no time. 4 graves, 3 stones, 2 sets of bones, but all 4 souls unquiet. The mist comes off the creek when the year's turning, and what on earth? Said a new voice. The bus driver went still, except that his tongue shot around just once and licked his red lips. Seth, the pale-haired farmhand, was standing at the gate of the graveyard. Is he scaring you? He asked Ollie. He had his hands in his pockets. He didn't raise his voice, but the bus driver was backing up. Never mind, said the driver, his voice almost a whine. Just telling this little inquisitive one some history. Nothing wrong with history. Seth raised a pale brow. Nothing at all wrong with history. The bigger problem is cornering a kid in a graveyard. Seth's voice was completely ordinary, comforting. Ollie felt the little scared knot inside her begin to ease. Go on, said Seth to the driver. I'll walk her back. Without another word, the bus driver hunched his shoulders and hurried out the gate and up the road. Got tired of Cora, did you? Seth asked her. Still breathless with fright, Ollie managed. It was noisy in there. Well, you'll have that, said Seth, kids and all. He waved Ollie out of the graveyard and shut the gate behind him. Ollie, looking at the back of his head, wondered why she was stuck with brown hair when some people got unlikely shades of blonde. Is it true? Ollie asked as they walked. Seth turned to her with a face politely questioning. What the bus driver said, are there only 2 bodies buried in those 3 graves? She pointed to the 3 at the back of the graveyard. Seth's glance sharpened. He said that? I'm going to really have to make sure that guy stops lurking around. Use your head. How would he know who's buried down there? It's not like we're running around digging up 100-year-old graves just for the sake of ghost stories. So there is a ghost story? Seth smiled. It softened the angular bones of his face. Ollie found herself warming to him. Come on, kid, said Seth. There's always a ghost story. Look around. How long have people lived on this land? There's us, yeah, but before us, there were those people in that graveyard back there. Fanny Collar, you saw her, right? On her grave, it says that she married the first white child born in Evansburg. Why do you think that was even a thing? Because for them, there were the Abenaki, and they had this land and farmed it and died on it and wrote their ghost stories while people died of plague in the streets of London. Beth's eyes were far away. So yes, there is always a ghost story. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Wherever you go in this big, gorgeous, hideous world, there is a ghost story waiting for you. Maybe made up, or maybe not, but that's no excuse for that guy to lurk around graveyards and scare kids. They were getting to the edge of the wood. Ollie could see the scarecrows peeking over the carrot tops in the vegetable garden. You should probably stay out of the graveyards this close to Halloween, said Seth. I think the others are in the horse barn. He gave her a push in the right direction and started off toward the cornfield, whistling. So much for sneaking off. She couldn't very well say she'd gotten lost now. Ollie headed toward the horse barn. In the normal light of the barnyard, Ollie was less sure that something weird was going on. Ms. Webster probably had a well-hidden mental illness that made her panic and throw books into rivers. Or maybe she just hated books. The author of Small Spaces had probably visited the farm once. And she had seen the graves, heard the story, got inspired. That was the only logical explanation. The bus driver was standing at the edge of the vegetable garden. She had to walk past him. Ollie lifted her chin and stiffened her spine. Linda Webster is maybe crazy, and this guy certainly is. Death is nice. The sun is shining. And they're still waiting, you know, whispered the driver as Ollie went by. Beth and Kathy. You can hear them crying at night, or calling the boys, but they don't answer. Ollie gave up all pretense of coolness and ran toward the horse barn.